Okay, so starting off with constructivism. The definition, kind of based on what we talked about in class, is essentially is gonna be a theory that has to do with social connections between human and actors, and then going into the questions that ask the important assumptions that has to do with it based on class discussion would be that the structure and agency are mutually constituted. Identity constitutes interests and actions, and that interests lead to individual identity. When it comes to when it comes to level of analysis, based on class discussion, we said that it would be individual based on that identity of an individual affects their choices. Then for LOC or LA, we essentially discussed in class that it can be both, and we use like an example for poker, like you go play with a bunch of friends or a bunch of acquaintances, and so you're there to get money, so then it's kind of LOC, and then when you become their friend it's LOA because someone's struggling, so you're like, oh, it's the right thing to do, whatever. And then for the structure and agency, as mentioned before, it's mutually constituted, so that now means that agency um, can affect structure and vice versa. They both affect each other. And so with that, your perceived choice, the way you perceive what choices you have for your agency can now change your structure. And so that was mentioned in class as well on page 37 of the International Relations Theory book. When it comes to the rational choice theory, the RCT, essentially based on what we talked about in class, is about how you can. It's a theory that explains like how you get what you want. The important assumptions that come with it that we kind of talked about in class is that preferences are fixed, individual based behavior is based on preferences and cost benefit, and that choices are aimed to maximize your preference. For your level of analysis, we say that it was individual, and that in class, it pretty much only talks about the individual. For LOC or LOA, I said LOC because as we discussed in class, for your decisions, things like that, you're taking into account the cost benefit of the situation. For structure and agency, structure would be the individual's preference, and agency would be the choices they have to maximize and gain that preference. When we talk about bureaucratic politic, political politics theory, um, bureaucratic politic model. I mean, essentially in class kind of definition we came up for the theory. It kind of explains the choices made from conflict negotiation and bargaining and bureaucratic systems. So when we start talking about the important assumptions, the important ones are that states are influenced by bureaucratic process, and bureaucratic are rational actors. For level of analysis, it would be system because it can include organizations, whether from a state level or from like things like NATO and whatnot. From LOC or LOA, LOA because it is appropriate to argue with what you know is best and has the best intentions. Um, for the structure and agency, the BPM. So for that, the structure would be like the negotiation, the conflict, etc. And then your agency would be your perception of choice you have that is made by your structure that you can change and influence.